Every day I wake up and I feel so alive. I think to myself.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Cheeky Cauldron podcast, where no topic is too spicy for the pot. I am your co-host, Ani Williams, and I'm joined again today with my friends and fellow co-host, Mai Cherie and Tamika Soretti. We are so excited today because we have a special guest in our studio, a woman who is the head of editorial at Sex with Emily and the creator of Submit Here, a Substack about culture, sex, and being a human being, Miss Tolly Mosley.
Hi, Ani.
Yay.
Hi, Tamika. Hi, Mai Cherie. What a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're so
thanks
happy
for
to have
coming.
you here. So Tolly's here because we are discussing the countercultural lifestyle of polyamory and sex positive. The sex positive agenda is something that Tolly's really familiar with, and we're super excited. She's also been interviewing women on her Substack that are polyamorous. So we feel like you have a lot of insight.
Yeah, no, I am pushing the sex positive agenda.
That's
That is
exciting.
absolutely true. And on my Substack, what I've been doing is interviewing specifically non-monogamous moms because I think that they're kind of interesting. If you ask the average person on the street to do a word association game and ask them, what do you think of when you hear the word mom? What do you think? 9 times out of 10, someone's going to say selfless. Moms are selfless.
Oh,
They're
I love that.
sacrificing. Now, when you ask someone to play a word association game and say, what do you think of non-monogamy? First word that comes to mind, they're going to say selfish. And so the non-monogamous mom puts into conversation these two really interesting terms.
Okay, I'm going to stop you because I
Right?
want people first to fully
Yeah.
understand what
Go.
this even is.
Mm.
But before we even do that, we need to
Yeah, we
talk
were getting
about
deep.
food.
Wow,
Deep
this is
already.
gonna be spicy.
I told you guys, she's the best.
Buckle up.
So we always feature a restaurant. So we're going to jump and do that. And then we're going to jump back to you. I can't wait. So the restaurant that we featured this week is a new one to all of us. We were so fortunate to be there on its opening. It's called Sushi Roku, and it is at 405 Colorado Street, Suite 100. Now, I'm just going to read a little blurb from their website because it makes me want to go back to the restaurant. It says, it is a pioneer of contemporary sushi, incorporating diverse, non-traditional ingredients from Latin America and Europe, and it's into its edible works of art. So I'm super excited to share the reel. Bryce, can you show the reel? That's you guys in the very clean restroom. There's
No,
me.
I
So
love it.
this restaurant is right across the street from the Capitol Grill, and there's valet parking. It was so easy to get in, and the atmosphere was so lovely.
I loved her.
Our cute little
Great.
She was
Our
great.
waitress was awesome.
There it is. Sushi
Hey.
Roku.
That was so delicious.
That wasn't my favorite. That was my
yeah,
favorite.
yeah.
That was mine.
You can't go wrong with salmon.
Oh, I
that
really
was
like that
so
too.
yummy
What
as
was that
well.
called?
That was the
hamachi.
yellowtail.
Oh, that
Yeah,
was
yellowtail
I love
hamachi.
how y'all do this.
Oh my God, it's so much fun. Now this dessert is
Legendary.
crazy.
Legendary dessert.
It sounded horrible when she described it to me and TT anyway. It's like all this delicious homemade, like in studio made desserts around cotton candy. But then they set it on fire. The cotton candy is really just a globe. And it burns off and reveals this beautiful dessert. So that
and I
what
was like,
made.
no, we don't want that trash. But then when she brought it, it was very. I did, and I was like,
and then she told Tamika, she was like, "Don't knock it till you try it." And then, and then
I
she
tried
brought
it.
it out.
And it was really good.
It was amazing. The presentation was amazing. Like
Yeah.
it was so amazing, and it was delicious as well. Like the way she described it, you would never know, but once we like dipped into it and the whole presentation, it was such an experience.
That's the thing. It's experiential. And I just
Yes.
love that y'all make this a regular feature of your friendship, just ritualizing going out to restaurants together.
Exactly. 'Cause It's all about joy, and that's how we
Yes.
stay healthy and heal, right?
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay, so now we get to go back. Thank
Back
you for
in.
your little
Yeah.
like snippet in the before.
Yeah, no, we're going to keep going in this pleasure conversation,
Yeah.
and food and friends is part of it.
Okay, so the term polyamory was coined not that long ago. It was like only 30 years ago. in 1990. And when it was coined because a group of ethical non-monogamist got together and wanted to have something to call their life. They wanted a name for it. And so the term polyamory was born. Now, what I was going to ask of you before we got into anything was if you could help our listeners understand the difference in polyamory versus polygamy, because a lot of people get those two so mixed up.
Sure. Okay. Simple terms. Polygamy is being married to more than one mate. So maybe you've heard this term in a religious context, and probably like 99% of the time, it is a man in a hetero partnership with more than one wife. Okay. So we're talking about marriage. We're talking about matters of the state, an institution. Polyamory is many loves. So under the umbrella of polyamory, it can look however you want to. It could be an open relationship. It could be you are romantic with many people, but you only have sex with one person. It could be you are bisexual and maybe you have a partner who is one gender and then you date other genders as well. So polyamory is literally many loves. Polygamy is many marriages.
Okay,
I love that.
I really love the way you gave that delineation, because you started with polygamy is more to do with the state, right? And polyamory is more to do with the individuals involved. So that brings us to my next question, right? And that is about the sex positive movement, because that is a political movement. And there's sex positive and sex negative. Sex positive is that sex is actually useful and we need it to have a better society and it's healthy for people. I know you're a sex positive person.
Yeah.
You're
Pro
right?
sex.
And then we have sex negative, which is on the other end of the spectrum, which sex is actually hurting society.
Yeah.
And sex should only be used for procreation. And of course, these are two things on either end of a spectrum, and you can be somewhere in the middle of that. Now, there's also some personal terms: sex favorable, sex neutral, adverse, sex repulsed. All of these, which I'm not going to go into the deep delve, but they have to do with the self, right? So they're not so much concerned about what's happening in your bedroom or your bedroom. It's like, if I don't want to have sex, I'm repulsed by it, but I really don't care what you do, which I'm fine with, right?
Yeah.
That's being human. So I just want to go back to then the sex positive and how polyamory supports the sex positive movement. And I would love to hear your feelings around this.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you all, but to me, sex negative is just the default culture, right? like I grew up thinking that, first of all, I didn't know masturbation, to take a common example, was for me at all. And I didn't know that being a sexual agent, being like having an autonomous sexuality was just anything that I was allowed to have, because I grew up with slut shaming. I grew up with like, oh, you're asking for it. I grew up with all these messages about just what it meant to be a good girl. And if you are sexual or openly sexual, you're promiscuous, and that's just a bad thing to be. So I think that sex negativity is in so many ways just the air we breathe.
But I have a question. When you were like that, did you think other people shouldn't be doing that either? Or was it just about yourself?
Yeah, I think I thought it was for all people.
You did. Okay. So,
Yeah.
so definitely
okay.
sex negative.
Yeah,
Okay,
I feel
go on.
like I was judged and I was judgmental.
Judgment. Okay.
Yeah,
got it.
yeah.
No, that's very
I also
fair.
grew up in Texas, in the
Yeah.
Bible about. But here's the funny thing: is my parents were not religious. I have the coolest parents. I love my parents. Like I put myself in youth group.
Oh, wow.
Like they did not impose that on me. Like youth group came from me, and I readily accepted. So anyway, but back to sex negativity and sex positivity. So I think that what this really comes down to, if we want to go deeper than just sex itself, is I think we live in a culture that's really suspicious of pleasure, right?
Really?
Yeah.
'Cause I think we're overindulgent in pleasure,
Yeah, well,
especially in the United
Can
States.
be,
We'll
but
say-
she said suspicious. Like, so if you are
Suspicious.
overindulgent, then there's a judgment on it. Is that what
Yeah. I mean, and one of my favorite books on this is by Adrienne Marie Brown. It's called Pleasure Activism. And a lot of times she says when she brings up this term, what people get is this glaze in their eyes where they think hedonism, think like out and out, like I'm going to eat ice cream all day. I'm going to go to strip clubs all the time, play video games all night. No, that's numbing.
Yes.
That's not pleasure that feeds you, that nourishes you. So we have to be really clear that pleasure itself exists on a spectrum. Of course, you can have pleasure and hard work. Of course, you can have pleasure and discipline. Of course, you can have pleasure and sacrifice, even.
Do you think that people want to keep the pleasure that they have private? Is that why? Because there's like this privacy around sex should just be in the bedroom. Sex should not be talked about.
Yeah.
Pleasure should not be talked about. That's private between my partner and I or myself. Is it more of like this privacy thing where if you're out like, oh, I enjoy sex or I enjoy masturbation,
Sure.
that's if you feel like this slut shaming that you're talking about,
Oh, yeah.
that you know, like I feel like it might be that people want to keep this under wraps or private because they feel naughty or something.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think people don't want to be judged.
Mhm.
You know, like, I mean, I went through a whole thing just starting my Substack 10 months ago, just writing about sex, just writing about pleasure. It made me feel really insecure. I was like, what if people judge me? What are people going to think I'm creepy? What if people are going to think I'm running around on my husband? And I finally had to ask myself, who are these people?
Yeah.
that you're worried about?
Who are they?
Yeah.
Like, it's not my parents. Like, it's not my friends.
Yes.
Like, it's not you guys.
Yes.
Like,
The self-judgment
who are
is the
these
loudest
people?
one in our heads.
Yeah, who are
But-
these people?
I just want to circle back to what you and Titi were saying, right?
Yeah.
So she's saying, oh, I think that we're indulgent. And you're saying you agree, but that overindulgence can remove pleasure.
Totally. I mean,
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that, like, kind of like as a whole, we don't have the emotional maturity skills yet to like put on the brakes at appropriate moments. But I also think that then we default into thinking like, oh, well, then like sacrifice, just like having a hard life is the only way to be a good person. We like walk around thinking that there's a template of how to be a good, virtuous, noble person. And I just don't happen to agree with that. I think that you define your own values and you live a life, hopefully, where your actions reflect your values. And if sex and pleasure are part of those values, great.
And you're saying this is part of the sex positive movement, these feelings?
I would think so. I mean, I think with the sex positive movement, I mean, I'm not the spokesperson for the whole movement.
No, but I want to know that your, like the way
Yeah.
your take is on it.
Yeah, I think with the sex positive movement, if I could like sum up what I think most people would agree with is that we're trying to divorce this idea that there's like one good way to be a virtuous person because like Christianity, Protestantism, it's the air we breathe.
Yes.
And there are a lot of ideas baked in there that are patriarchal. There's a lot of ideas baked in there that treat women as private property. Okay?
Yeah.
I need everyone to hear this.
100%.
There's a lot about Christianity, a lot about marriage that treats women as private property. So I think the sex positive movement is trying to divorce what it means to live a full, good, meaningful life from these old ideas where pleasure was suspicious, sex was suspicious. And I'm going to say one more thing.
Oh, no.
Unmarried women got access to birth control in 1972. 1972. All right. I was born in 1982. We're the first generation of women that are trying to figure out how do we treat sex for pleasure. So I think we're in this moment right now where
That's what I mean. It's not that
Yeah.
old.
it's not that old. It's like on the one hand, Roe's being overturned. On the other hand, we have the sex positivity movement. So like it's really recent that women could access sex for pleasure. So I think collectively we're trying to figure
I
our
still
values
think
around
it's
it.
not there.
Oh, of course not.
Mhm.
No, there's a lot of
Like,
there's a lot of
reason
work to be
that
done.
we're now talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah.
Totally.
Okay, well, thank
Yes.
you. I just want everyone here and our listeners to know a little history about it.
Sure.
And it speaks to exactly what you were saying.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I did my little research, it's basically started in the 20s. You know, the roaring 20s, a time period that I actually think I would have enjoyed. And it was this idea of take off your underwear, stop all these like constricted garments, smoke cigarettes, cut your hair, have
Dance.
fun,
Drink booze.
drink
Yeah.
booze, and have sex with whoever you want.
Yeah.
That was part of it.
Yes,
Sex was part of it. Then the 40s and 50s, rolled in and everything buttoned up. But there was census taken that people in their homes were not as buttoned up as one might think they are on Sunday at church.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of people like, no, we remember the good old days and we still have fun.
Yeah.
And then we move a little more forward. Of course, there was another sexual revolution we all know about, the 60s and 70s, right? Woodstock, that whole fun thing. So this is the part that I loved, because when I first met you and a lot of other people that were part of the sex positive movement, a lot of my friends and clients who were also polyamorous, a lot of you guys are writers. And I thought, so many of these people are writers and communicators for a living. There's something about sex positivity and polyamory that speaks to people that know how to really communicate. This is a fundamental piece.
Well, do you think they have to be? Because if they're going to get the message out there, like, how are they going to do it if they're not good communicators and good writers?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That was
we
the
don't
piece
want
that I
some
put
dummy
together.
carrying the message.
Well, okay, so
I feel
you're
like
absolutely right. Well, that and when you go to therapy, if you want to start a polyamorous relationship and you're already married, communication is the first thing. We communicate everything. Everything's out in the open. Everything is shared, right?
Well, you're also a lover. If you're polyamorous, you're a lover. And so when you're a lover, you can also be a poet and you can be romantic. It's like there's that love around it. If you love many people and you see the beauty.
Oh, you're saying the
people,
romantic side of
it's
a
the
writer.
romantic side
okay. That
of
makes
like
sense
being
too.
polyamorous. Yeah, it's like it's
Well,
love.
two
equal
of
from
the
heart.
huge giants in this movement were also literary giants. Ayn Rand, we all know, the Russian novelist, and her lover that was out in the open, her protege, which I love, was a younger man. And then we also Robert Heinlein, who is a science fiction author, also huge. Now, Ayn Rand was anti-statist. So she was like, keep government out of my business. I don't even want government. They shouldn't control anything, and they should certainly be out of our bedrooms, right? But when her and her lover got together and they were on their political journey with all their writings, they really hurt their spouses. They were out in the open about it. They never lied, but their spouses were devastated. So when you talk about speaking for, the polyamorous community, which wasn't coined that yet, but the sex positive community was like, we don't really want you to be our intellectual representation because you didn't do it right. You have a big ego. Screw you, husband and wife. We're having the time of our lives. Whatever, right? Yeah. So that didn't work. Then here comes Robert Heinlein. Robert was a hardcore non-monogamous and non-monotheism. Which I don't think it's a word. But he wasn't into monotheism. So
if there's just one of anything, Robert's not into it.
Well, that's what I was saying. He believed that the soul was abundant, right?
Yeah. Like, he was that pleasure seeker trying to have it all.
Lots of gods. And he wanted lots of lovers. He wanted both. So he put these ideas into a book that became wildly successful. He was an iconoclast. So this book was put in place to break up all of these ideas and all of these icons that we still do kind of pray to in America. This book was called A Stranger in a Strange Place. So that book was about a man who was from Earth that grew up on Mars, came back to Earth and opened up a church. And the church was saying no to jealousy and replacing that with ritualistic love and sex. Well, this dude named Tim Zell decided to open that church. He read this fiction book and was like, yes,
sounds good.
This church is amazing. So he opened up the church, and then he and his wife started a magazine called Green Egg, I believe. That one I hadn't heard of. Yeah, Green Egg. And the magazine was when she finally coined the term polyamory.
Hey.
Oh,
And so it
wow.
came from this small government idea of Ayn Rand and this abundant idea of Heinlein. And he took those two ideas together, put them in the magazine, and came up with this. Now, all of this politics has been interwoven the whole time, right? It's been this idea that we need the government out of our business, out of our bedrooms, stop shaming us, stop making things illegal. It's like we had one episode where we talked about how long it took for homosexuality
to become, totally.
Yeah.
Sodomy laws.
Yeah,
Right. We're on the
exactly.
books up until like 20 years ago.
Right. So there's so many things. It's not this over, the government wasn't like, no, you can't have sex. But it was like all these rules that made it illegal for this lifestyle. So with all that said.
Thank you for the history.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
I
great
think
now.
it's really
I think
important,
it's
right?
Amazing.
I think it's really important. And it's also for all the people out there who are judgmental.
Yeah.
I was like you. When I first heard about polyamory, I was like, what? People just want to have affairs. Like I also thought that they needed mental help. Well, guess what? Everybody needs mental help. It doesn't matter if you're polyamorous or monogamous. But what I loved, the more I learned about polyamory, was that it was very inclusive of the queer community. It was very inclusive of everyone. And monogamy, including monogamous. If you want to be monogamous, that's your business. Like, they don't care, as far as I understand.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
And even the sex positive movement isn't telling people to stop being monogamous.
Totally.
It's saying, here is another option.
Yeah.
Be playful, explore.
And stop being judgmental. Let's be accepting of everybody, right?
Yes.
So
As long as there's church and state and all that stuff, people are still going to be judgmental.
Yeah.
Because they want, it's about control of what you do in
Totally.
your household.
Absolutely.
It's not good enough that I can control what's going on in my house. Let me see what you're doing. What are you doing over there? Don't do that. You stop doing
Totally.
that. Why are you doing that? It's
Totally.
I think people are afraid of what they don't understand.
me too.
You
Yeah.
know? And so
And I think people are, that's why I wanted you to start with the definitions, right?
Yeah.
About
Yeah.
the difference in polygamy and polyamory. Because there are people who don't even realize it's a separate thing.
yeah.
To them, it's all the same thing.
Yeah.
And I also just want to clear up one quick thing. I think I said the name of the,
Stranger in a Strange World.
no, it's actually Stranger in a Strange Land.
Okay.
Stranger in a strange land.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I got that right. But okay, so great. Now I want to ask all about you.
Well, Ani, too, I just want
I
to say
wanna
is
hear-
you were so insightful to make that connection between communication and people in the sex positive movement.
In the movement.
Yeah.
And then that's why I was
love
excited
that.
when it was these literary giants
Yeah.
that were actually at the precipice of the movement. And I was like, oh, no wonder writers get this. Like, it started with a couple of ingenious writers. But okay, so I want to learn about you, though. I want to learn about your history. You told us a little bit. You said that you grew up in Texas. You said that you had judgment around it, that you were a sex negative person.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I want to know how you moved over into the sex positive side. Like, what was your
Oh, man. Okay.
inciting incident?
I will try to make this quick because there's a lot I could say about this. But
You already told us how old you are, so we know there's a lot.
Right. Yeah. Like, I'm 41. I'll be 42 in April. I'm very proud of that. I love my 40s so far. Okay. So I put myself in youth group in high school. And I remember sending my boyfriend away because we were making out and he touched my bra strap. I was like, get out of my house.
Wow.
How sex negative I was. Sorry, Teague. I'm really sorry about that looking back. Anyway. Okay. So I got to college and I was a writer and I was a Christian and I had this vision that I was going to create like a 17 magazine for Christian girls. That was my idea. So I signed up for journalism classes and I signed up for religion classes thinking it was going to be like Bible study. I was like, I could do this in my sleep. The first class I
have so many questions, but anyway.
Yeah, I've got answers. The first class I took was called The Historical Jesus. And in that class, that was the first time anyone talked to me about the historical and political context surrounding Jesus. For example, I had no idea that Jesus was Jewish. No one bothered to bring that up to me. I had no idea that Mary Magdalene wasn't actually a prostitute. That was just a PR campaign from the Catholic Church trying to denigrate her name because they don't want female leadership. I had no idea that Jesus and Mary Magdalene were like good buds and tight. I had no idea that there were other writings about Jesus that didn't get included in the Bible. And it was just politically expedient to
Or
keep
anything where women were.
Yeah. So like I just had no idea about any of that. So that just kind of started like helping me open my eyes like, whoa, maybe all this stuff I've been fed about Christianity, I need to kind of look at with a more critical lens. At the very same time, there was a Christian fraternity on campus who I assumed would be my buds. I just got there and be like, welcome to my friends. Okay. One of the guys, the president of the Christian fraternity, was holding all of these town halls on campus because our school president was trying to include sexuality in the non-discrimination clause. So at Southwestern University, in the year 2000, it said, we do not discriminate against race, creed, and class. And he wanted to include sexuality. The president of this Christian fraternity went on a tirade, which, by the way, this is ridiculous. There's 1,200 people at my school. He's having town halls to like 15 people. Okay? And it was so hateful. And I was like, wait, but like, you're a Christian. You're supposed to be like the loving people. And you're going around like, this is just hateful. And so within the space of one semester, I kind of started divesting from Christianity and a lot of the beliefs that went with it. And so that was when I first started questioning things. I started to take more, we didn't have a feminism department. We had a women's studies department. I started taking more classes there. I got really interested, Ani, in women at the turn of the century, especially in England, and like getting more independence and like just hanging out as friends with each other, not just being home locked away playing piano or whatever.
Right. Like learning French.
Right. So I got
being
like
squeezed into a corset.
Right. I just started getting interested in this like women's liberation period.
Yes.
But I went on to live like a pretty traditional life. I met the man who'd become my husband right out of college. And I got married when I was 25 years old. And we're still married, by the way. Like I'm married to an incredible man.
That's amazing.
And but I like went on to have a pretty traditional marriage and we had a child and I just kind of bought everything I've been told about sex in a marriage, which was that, all right, like in the first year or two of a relationship, it'll be hot, it'll be fun, and then it'll fall off. And then, you know, it's not fun, but you just got to do it because that's just what you do. That's just what you do.
You mean you have to have sex because that's what you do.
Yeah, you have to have sex. And so like, I kind of, without even realizing it, and not because my husband asked this of me, but just because this is what we had been told, I just started to think that sex wasn't really for me. It was what is now termed service sex. It's a service that I provide. Like, you want to have sex? Fine. Like, let's have sex, and like, I will be checking out. And that is how I think a lot of women in hetero marriages think of this. And then something really interesting happened. I started getting into aerial silks. There's a twist in the story. I know you're excited, Maishri, because you're into silk. And we wanted to do a joint event with this storytelling group in town called Bedpost Confessions. And so we pitched them around 2015, 2016 about doing a show together. We would have aerial dance and they would have their sex positive storytellers. And that first show was in 2016, and it just blew my mind.
Oh, I just got chills. I just love that.
Oh, it just blew my mind.
It's like those pinnacle moments in our life.
It was, Ani, it was a fork in the road that defined who I am today, because I saw, it was like how I wanted church to feel. It was just all of this love, all of this compassion, people telling their stories. And it was the first time I'd ever heard of sex as like something that could be like fun or wholesome and playful. Like I'd always just heard of sex as like salacious, greedy, porn, strip club, you know, just like I always heard it really like denigrated. And this is the first time I saw like, whoa, these people are just like so free. They're just so free. So
And I actually, just to
Yeah.
interject, I was invited to Bedpost Confessions by Jenna Valentine.
Oh my God.
She was there and she invited
Yeah.
me, and I did not make it. And I'm so sad that I didn't, but I saw
Yeah.
some clips of it and I'm like, this is incredible. And
Mhm.
how were you able to go in front of all those people and talk like this?
Yeah.
And she was like, because she was really in her divine femininity. And I
Yeah.
love that you gave that to so many people, not just women, men as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. No,
It's
Jenna's
amazing.
incredible. I mean, well, A, thank you, but also like thank them, the founders of Bedpost Confessions, Miranda Wiley, Julie Gillis, Sadie Smythe, and Rosie Reaver. Those are 4 women who got together 14 years ago and started this thing up. So that was my conversion moment. That's when I like started like becoming a sex positive person, because there's a community that welcomed me with open arms. And I couldn't stop going. I just couldn't get enough of this, of these people's freedom. It was just nourishing to me to see people who were that free and had that amount of self-love and truly love for others.
That brings me right into my next question, but go on.
Before you ask that, because I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, you were at this point with your husband, and
Yeah.
then you experienced this. How did you bridge the two?
Yeah.
Where your sex positivity started helping your marriage?
That is such a great question, Tamika. Well, so I know, Ani, you love Meeting Captivity by Esther Perel.
I do.
I read that book and I realized like, whoa, like sex can be for me, but I'm going to need to figure out what makes this fulfilling. Like I'm going to need to figure out how I get in my erotic, because a lot of people think that sex and eroticism are the same thing. They're not. Like ask any hetero woman, she's had sex before and has not felt erotic about it. You know, that's a really common experience. But like eroticism, that's when you feel free. That's when you play. That's when you feel embodied. Ariel, I'll be honest, is like an erotic zone for me. So it's like, how do you access your erotic? It doesn't have to be polyamory at all. It could just be going out dancing. It could be some other form of art, like having a deep conversation, like honestly, like this right now is like a form of eroticism for me. So I had to kind of go on that journey and self-actualize as an erotic person, and then come to my husband and be like, all right, like we're going to have to kind of be in a new marriage now. And this is going to look different from now on. And that like led us to like a very emotional but fulfilling journey of figuring out true yeses and true nos, boundaries, kinks. Turns out like I like a lot of kink stuff. And he came with me
It's so
on that
great
journey.
when you can do that journey with your spouse.
Yeah.
He was
The
open
love
to
goes
it.
so
yeah.
deep.
That was the next
Oh.
question. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, how did you get him on board? He was ready as well.
I mean, like,
obviously.
he was ready, but it was also intimidating. I mean, like, I just think that, like, we're not, I just think that women as sexual agents is still a dangerous idea to, like, most people, you know, and to a lot of straight men, you know, because we're used to women being pretty, being looked at, like, we're the commodity, right? And when we're doing the looking, when we can get off.
We're called whores.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
or
you're
when-
called a
100%.
whore. Like
Yeah,
there's
they don't
no-
like that
yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
we
Slut,
can get
whore.
off all by ourselves, you know, like that's intimidating. That's intimidating to most of the world. So like I had to start masturbating. I had to start listening to audio erotica. We went to therapy. Like there were a lot of changes that had to be made. And thank God, I had the kind of man who was like strong enough to go on that journey with me, because I don't think that every man is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's an actual movement on social media, and I wish we would have had the clip for this one. You know, I always send you guys good clips. These men are saying, men don't like loud women, or men, you know, they're just like talking about women, what they don't like and what we shouldn't do. And there are these women that play banjos, and whenever the men start talking, they start playing, and the man's mouth is moving, but you don't hear anything he's saying. You just hear these women. And they're like, it's a series now. I'm going to send it to y'all when I
okay.
find it.
Yeah.
It is brilliant.
Oh, well, we don't care.
Exactly.
We're loud. You don't like, oh, well, you know. Like,
Yeah, there was a young guy who was talking about he wants a woman like his mother. And he was going on and on talking about how women aren't like their mothers and they're too aggressive and they want to have fun and they want to hang out with their friends. And there's another man who came in and said, maybe they don't want you because
Yeah.
you want to marry your mommy. And I was so
Yeah.
funny. But I was like, yeah, listen to yourself, dude. You're
Yeah.
the reason. Like you're saying why women don't want to hang out with you.
And women absolutely do not want to be mothers to their husbands.
No.
So what
You
is
don't
he
wanna have
talking
sex
about?
with
He's
them anymore.
clueless.
Of course
Oh,
not.
yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
And here's the thing I also want to say about the sex positivity movement, because I think people, whenever they hear about it or they hear about feminism, they think it's man bashing. They think it's like all like pro women man bashing. No, we want to liberate men too. Like there's a
Yes, set
them
loneliness epidemic
free.
right now. Like we want men to like know how to form friendships and hang out with
'Cause
each
they
other.
don't.
Yes.
They don't.
You know,
That
like
comes up a lot with
Yeah.
couples.
Yeah.
Their husbands
Yeah.
don't know how to go out and make friends.
yeah. Like we infantilize men so much in this culture, and then they're in their computers becoming incels, joining like Red Pill Reddit. No, like we want to bring you
Yeah.
in.
Come, no red pill.
Don't
Reddit.
do that.
Ow.
Come talk
Well,
to
this
us.
is
Come hang
my
out.
my question actually is in alignment with all of this, right? And it's not just the sex positive movement, but polyamory specifically, because I am actually really, really fascinated with polyamory and how it can help a
Yeah.
marriage now. And this idea in polyamory that we are not expected for one person to satisfy all parts of us.
Yeah.
And I think as for a heteronormative marriage, for the husband to see his wife and the idea that I'm not everything, and she's reaching outside, it does. I mean, it just obliterates their ego and their
Yeah.
self-esteem,
Yeah.
right? And so I'm wondering, how can polyamory be used to help self-esteem in your estimation? Like, how can it be used to help couples come out of the sex death,
Yeah.
Sure.
the drudgery?
Okay, well, the first thing I'll say is I genuinely do believe that polyamory is not for everyone. Like for some people, monogamy just is the better fit. I know a lot of people who find monogamy just like very comforting. And also like when the sex dies, they're okay with that. Like they're just like not that sexual people. And like that is okay. So like even though I'm very actively pushing like the sex positive agenda, I want to say that like also you do you. Like no one has to like
Right,
be
which
out
is
here.
why it's a spectrum.
Yeah, like no one has like no, we're not like saying that like everyone has to like be polyamorous. But here's what I will say. Okay. Whenever people lament that like I am not enough for my partner, the thing that one of the most effective analogies I've heard is like, let's think about parents and their children. If you have more than one child, was it because the first one wasn't enough? Of course not. Of course not. You love your children because they're different people,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
Esther Perel has this idea in Mating Captivity and all over her work that, you know, hundreds of years ago, we got our needs met by a village, okay? Like we had companions, maybe we had other people that we had sex with, maybe we had people that helped us build our houses, we helped us people have foods, we had people that we went and cried to. We're tribal species. But now we come to our mates asking them to be everything for us. And by the way, this is not my idea, this is Esther Perel's. But when we come to a spouse and say like, I want you to be my best friend, I want you to be my hot lover, I want you to be my therapist, I want you to be my home repair person, I want you to be my chef.
Who can do all that?
Who can do all that?
Who can do all that?
Who
Yeah.
can do all
and
that?
work.
Who can do all that and
Yes,
work and
yeah.
work? That's a lot of pressure. So back to your question about like men feeling like, well, like I cannot provide enough for everyone. I think we've indoctrinated men to feel like if someone is interested in sex with someone else, that they have failed in some way, that there's like something wrong with their penis or there's something wrong with their masculinity. No. People get over familiar with each other. People start feeling like a familial relationship with their spouse. People need some distance sometimes. Okay. So it's not for the faint of heart, polyamory. If you open up, polyamory is not going to instantly heal your relationship problems, but it will reveal them. It'll shine a spotlight on, okay, is there some jealousy over here that I wasn't aware of? Are there some communication problems I wasn't aware of? Are there some specific insecurities? You know, like we've given men these really limited ideas of like what constitutes good sex, you know, and so there might, and by the way, women too, I'm talking about this in like a really hetero way, and I'm like talking about it like it's a man thing. No, this is a people thing. So, but here's the good thing.
I asked you specifically about the husbands.
About dudes, yeah.
Yeah. And I was going to get to the wives too, but I just specifically about the men, and I do think that we forget about the men, right?
Yeah.
We're always we're all women. We're focused on women.
Yeah.
But the men have their own needs, and I worry that men aren't feeling like they're powerful,
Yeah.
that men are being like left out of
Yeah.
the conversation
Totally.
about what they need sexually.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're also trying to like kind of renegotiate what healthy masculinity looks like. So it's just like an interesting time in culture. But like if your original question was like, how can polyamory help heal a couple? I think that it, like from what I've seen, it won't be instantaneous. But once you shine a spotlight on the issues that are in a relationship, now you know what they are. And now you can take intentional steps towards healing. If it's communication, let's go work on that. If it's jealousy, let's go work on that. If it's inadequacy, insecurity, let's go work on that.
My biggest takeaway, you said a lot, but my biggest takeaway from what you said is that it shines a spotlight on what needs work.
Yeah.
So even if you just talk about the possibility of polyamory,
don't
ever do it. You decide we're a monogamous couple. It's not for us. We're too old. Too late to go back. But if you talk about it to see where that kicks, to see where you get excited at the idea, where you get scared, like that's a great thing to bring to your couples counselor.
And hey, things can change. Like the idea of my husband with another person is the biggest turn on to me. It is so sexy and arousing to me. Wasn't always that way. Like things change over time. Like we grow up, we get older, we see some
and
things.
you're evolving as a human being. I feel like we go through these phases in our life where we evolve.
Yeah.
And so isn't that like why we're here, for the human experience and to evolve and grow in who we are instead of being stagnant? And so adding that element of like, okay, let's change it up. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
I love that for us as a human race.
Yeah. Growth. All about growth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you think it can also, and I'm going back not away from, but specifically to polyamory again. Do you think that it can help people overall emotionally? Like, have you found with these moms that you're interviewing that the ones who are feeling stuck are in a rut? Because I can't tell you that's the number one issue with a lot of people in therapy, and not just my clients, but when I get together with other therapists, like that's what moms are going through, right? And so we're trying to think of creative ideas for them. And do you think that this is something, excuse me, that can help them on an emotional health standpoint of like, oh, I get to focus on me now? Like beyond just discovering their body, because a lot of them don't masturbate, but beyond that, but just
one of the most compelling things I've ever heard, again, Esther Perel say, is that sometimes we don't crave another person, we crave a different version of ourselves.
I love that.
So if we're known as the mom, we're known as the wife, we're known as, maybe you just want to be thought of as like a sexy hot woman at the club.
Yeah.
Maybe that.
And no more.
Just hit me
And
in a different kind of way.
Yeah.
No?
But it's true. And there's nothing on it, right? There's no responsibility to be anything more.
Yeah. So I think that for, you're talking about your female clients who feel stuck. I think that whenever you start asking questions about polyamory, there's two things that are going to happen. First of all, you're going to get a PhD in communication. If you're going to run the emotional gauntlet of non-monogamy or polyamory, you have got to step up your communication game. But guess what? That's going to benefit all your relationships. It's going to benefit your friendships. It's going to benefit your work relationships. You're going to start to gain a degree of self-respect that may not have been there before, because you're going to get very clear on your boundaries and your values and how you want to show up for people and how you want people to show up for you. So you're going to be asked to work on your communication skills. That's step one. But two, you're going to get really introspective. And from what I've seen with these moms, they are more intentional than ever about their relationships. They're highly emotionally attuned because the last thing they want is to make this choice at the expense of other loving relationships in their life. They don't want to be the bad story of non-monogamy. They don't want to be
They don't want to be the Ayn Rand.
Yeah, like the dumpster fire. Like they want this to work. So they're not just going to be talking to their, other partners, not just going to be talking to their spouse, they're going to be talking to their kids and making sure, like, are we good? Like, there's just something about kind of like the culture of polyamory and non-monogamy that just makes you kind of like a nerd for relationships. It makes you look at like, okay, what constitutes like a healthy relationship? So I think that because we're in a loneliness epidemic right now, and because there are so many people who feel stuck, you don't have to be polyamorous, you don't have to be non-monogamous, but if you start getting at all curious about the culture, you're going to find a lot of values that point back to good communication and healthy relationships. And those are skills that you can use in any arena of your life.
Yeah, I think that, and to highlight the piece of, I don't have to be everything for you. That's a big one. And I think Esther Perel like hit the nail on the head with that one.
What's this book again? I need to read this.
I know. Mating in captivity.
Mating in captivity.
Mating in captivity.
I'm going to Amazon as soon as we get done.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to wrap up, but I just wanted to quickly ask, because we started a little bit later, what do you have to say to all the naysayers out there? The people listening, the people who were like us.
Yeah.
With all the judgment screaming in their ears about, oh, well, this is just an excuse for people to cheat on their wives or cheat on their husbands.
Yeah.
This is just a bunch of horny people. Like,
Yeah.
what do you have to, I like that. What do you have to say to those people?
You might be right. Guilty as charged. No,
And speaking of sex positivity, there's nothing wrong with that.
yeah. Like, I think, with these moms, like the biggest point of pushback I see is like, what about the children? And we talked about that a minute ago, that like, if you're going to be polyamorous, if anything, it makes you a better communicator. Did I just crack
I'm
you
sorry. When you said, what about the children? Everybody's like, fuck them kids. It just made me laugh. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, but there's like a lot of pearl clutching that they think that these moms are like all of a sudden going to be like these totally neglectful people. No, like that's not going to happen. That goes back to like the selflessness thing.
Mhm.
Like
that dichotomy.
Yeah. To all the naysayers are out there, I have been you, and I love you. We're all on this journey of trying to figure out what makes us liberated and free. Okay? For you, that may look something completely different. Maybe it looks like heaven to you. Maybe that's like what your version of liberation is. But something that you and I share in common is we want to be free. We want to be free from suffering. Okay? And so if all of these moms, all these people in the sex positivity movement are going out there and they're trying to find something that works for them, and it's consensual, and they're creating more love in this world, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. I would be disingenuous if I pretended that this was like not at all about sex. Of course, sex is involved in it. But if we can normalize people trying to create more love in this world with better communication skills and less loneliness, I am on board, because those reflect my values.
Yeah.
It's okay if it's not yours, but those reflect my values.
Very well said. Very well said. Thank you. And thank you so much for joining us. I can't believe how quickly the time
I know.
flew by.
Tell us how to find you so we can stay up
Oh my
on
gosh,
all
you
the
can find me so many
things.
places. Okay, so TollyMosley.com is my website. I have a Substack called Submit Here. All right. It's because I want people to be able to submit their stories about sex, relationships, desire, and gender. And you can find me on Instagram at Tolly Mosley.
Yay. Great.
Aw.
Well, thank you. So,
Thank you,
yes,
Sally.
be sure you guys write all those things down. Submit your stories to her. Submit here. I love that name, by the way. Submit. I know you.
Kinky.
I know you knew what you were doing. I was like, oh, I really like that. Okay. So anyway, thank you so much. If you made it this far, be sure to like and subscribe to get more content. We will be back next week with polygamy. And we actually have a couple who grew up in a faith that supports polygamy. So we're super excited to hear what it was like growing up in that culture. And I'm so happy that you made the delineation between the two. And the 2 episodes will show you even more how different it is. So again, like and subscribe. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, baby, it's my time.